David Ji, shifting again subjects slightly, and now again, this is somewhat of a question which I think we could have a separate discussion itself, but I still want to ask it, and that is, if you can tell us why a dharmic renaissance matters, and particularly, how do you see India as a dharmic power in the world? What would that mean, for Bharat and for the world?
Yes, very important question. Again, I like to discriminate between different levels and meanings of India. Some people like to look at India as a modern nation state founded in 1947 and developed from there. India is also, of course, a great culture, which we still see throughout the country, whether it's all the festivals, the temples. More people do pilgrimage in India in any given year than all the rest of the world put together. You don't have millions of people going to temples, Chardham, Ganga, Kumbh Melas, another Kumbh Mela starting soon, for example. So that degree of devotion, dedication, you don't find anywhere else, and it's been going on for centuries. Ongoing temples, again, festivals, and every sort of music, dance, village culture, local culture. So India is a great culture that needs to be preserved. And it is being preserved. Europe has almost lost its culture. America only has a very recent culture because it's a new country. Native traditions, China has almost lost its culture. Africa, all these places. So we need to preserve that culture. It's the oldest and most vast in the world. India's literary tradition through Sanskrit and regional languages dwarfs all the other traditions put together, and yet hardly anybody studies it or knows about it. So then we have India as a civilization. India as a Dharmic civilization. And India as a Dharmic civilization is not limited to India today. The Dharmic civilization influence went to China, Japan, Indonesia, the Philippines. It was prominent in Central Asia. It was borrowed and used even in the Middle East, It was very common. So India as a civilization is very important to, Dharmic civilization is very important to preserve, because right now, our civilizations are like 100, 200 years old. They're trying to build themselves around recent political theories or psychological theories that have no study of consciousness. So I say we have to honor the India as a civilization, and that's not to say that India as a nation doesn't have its own specific political and social needs. That is another matter. And Dharmic Renaissance, for example, so there's this debate. Was science known in ancient India to some degree? Of course, we have every aspect of science fiction mentioned in ancient India, whether it's machines that travel through the air, whether it's telepathy, whether it's visiting different lokas, whether it's different types of being, which is healing practices. So many things. But one science India has is the science of consciousness. What is the nature of consciousness at a universal level, at a cosmic level? Not just the embodied human mind and intellect. So India teaches us that in the core of the human being is a connection to the Atma, the self of the entire universe. So that idea of universal consciousness and science to realize it through yoga, pranayama, mantra, meditation, so many things is there in India. That I think is India's greatest gift to the world. But India as a civilization is upholding the civilizational heritage of Asia. If the Chinese would go back more to their Dharmic traditions, they would make a much more positive contribution to the world. They have a wonderful Dharmic tradition of their own, but also connected to India, Japan, so many things. So it's very important that there is this Dharmic renaissance. And also Dharma as a civilization going back, you see, we are trapped in kind of a superficial politics today. Everything is right and left of the United States or Europe, and that becomes the model for everything that happens in the world. Dharma is universal law. We must be grounded in ecology, in nature. We can't just be based on our human laws and considerations and human rights over everything else. We have to honor that there is a universal Dharma. Ahimsa. No living creature wants to be harmed. You do not want to be harmed. Honoring the universal Dharma of Ahimsa, you don't harm anybody. That's not a law. That is a fact of life. So Dharmic renaissance, and there's so much of value in all the yoga traditions. The Vedantic philosophy and psychology dwarfs anything else in the Western world. I'll say that very clearly. They understand the level of all emotions, sattva, rajas, tamas, the need to purify the mind, the need to gain clarity in behavior. And Dharmic renaissance also means things like Ayurveda. It means another idea of human history. Human beings were not just physical bodies. We come from the rishis, yogis, seers. We're not just the, products of outer things. So Dharmic renaissance is important for India, for Asia, but also the rest of the world. And what is India popular for in the world today? Every place you go in the world today, there's some Indian counterculture through yoga, Ayurveda, Buddhist, Sikh, and of course the Indian diaspora, Hindu temples all over. And the Indian diaspora has the most affluent and educated people, guiding people, and they're causing no trouble anyway. They're not terrorists. They're not causing law and order problems. They're not on welfare rolls. They're not in prisons. They are guiding forces. And the influence on the society from the Dharmic traditions has been very profound, whether it is ahimsa, whether it is healing, whether it is yoga. These things should be respected. And what happened in India, this is very sad, but I want to make it very clear. India had a tremendous renaissance in the 19th and early 20th century. Look at the galaxy of great yogis and rishis. Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, Ramatirtha, Sri Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, Anandamayi Ma, Ramana Maharshi, Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, Paramahansa Yogananda, who went to the West, Swami Chinmayananda. There's so many that we can mention, the Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram. And these influenced the independence movement. But the generation that took power after 1950 became progressively leftist, Marxist, communist, and rejecting the Bharatiya traditions, not honoring the gurus, not honoring the festivals. That is changing today. But if you go into the history books, you don't see the greatness of Bharat in the Indian history books and the Indian education that was rewritten since then. So that needs to be reclaimed because that is a great heritage. That is not, people go to India for that heritage, they don't go for Che Guevara, they don't go for, these Marxist shadows which have been kind of rejected in the West. And Nehru was a great diplomat at many levels, but he was not someone who really could represent or inspire the Indian culture. Indira did better in some ways, but it's only today that the India is now taking more pride in their culture, their tradition. And here I also want to raise the issue of what is Hindu. Some people say, India shouldn't be said to be a Hindu country. Tell me what Islamic country doesn't call itself is Islamic country, starting with Pakistan. Tell me what Christian country doesn't acknowledge its Christian past. Even the United States, it still refers itself to as a Christian country. India is a Hindu majority country. Its culture, its civilization is Hindu, Dharmic, connected with many related traditions. So that is just simply a fact. And what does democracy mean? Democracy means that majority rules. We have to understand that under Mughal influence, the Hindus were a majority, but they didn't rule. Under British influence, Hindus were a majority, they didn't rule. And now we're told that in the modern world, democracy means minority rules. And you protect the minority, which means there's never going to be any Hindu rule. But the fact is, it's not a question of rule of one group or another. It's a question of honoring the rights. And in that respect, Hindus have the same rights to their worship, to their temples. In India, Hindu temples are regulated and restricted. Other groups are not. See, this is not majority rule. This is actually majority suppression. So we have to give the Hindu Dharma its place of respect, its place historically. Ram Janmabhoomi is a very good example of that. That is an ancient historical site. And Hindus have long been the least political people in the world. They hardly vote wherever they are. And in India, for a long time, they also weren't voting at all. Swami Dayananda said, Hindu vote is sacred, all Hindus should vote. You start from there. In fact, everybody should vote that way. But it's very good that Hindus are awakening, because Hindus have been oppressed. Hindus are denigrated. Hindus are not given a positive point of view. Hindus have been one of the most colonially oppressed people, and yet they've changed the colonial history of America, and now they're praising the Native Americans. They haven't changed the colonial history very much of India, even in the West. So we need to continue with this Dharmic renaissance and honoring of Bharat, which the Hindu has its place of importance. So it's very important there is a broader Dharmic renaissance. And the idea of Sanatana Dharma, there's not exclusivism, there's not a need to convert and control. Often today we're told that Hindus are intolerant. But the fact is, Hindus are the target of conversion by a multi-billion-dollar international conversion business. They aren't doing that to other people. And if that is intolerance, then to me, that is very strange. The fact is, Hindu identity is very beautiful and very important. I'm not saying Islamic identity, Buddhist identity is not important. But Hindu identity also has its particular value, its many forms, and its richness of culture. And here we must understand that the West has a hard time understanding the Hindu tradition because it's so much more colorful, vast, and we need to preserve that. So that is part of the issues I would bring up relative to a Dharmic renaissance and a new India, a new Bharat that embraces Bharatiya Sanskriti. And even look, you see it embraces Buddhism. Look at what's happening with the new diplomacy coming out of India today. In fact, it's embracing the entire world from a standpoint of Dharma and the idea that India was a guru among nations, not just simply one among many. India is now the world's largest democracy. So these are very important considerations. Hari Om.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.